Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be finalising our Blood Angels videos by looking at their organisation and some of the differences they have compared to the standard Codex chapter. The Blood Angels are by and large a standard Codex chapter. They have 10 companies and each are made up of about 100 Marines. However, there are some differences between the Blood Angels and other Codex chapters which are worth highlighting. To start with, the Blood Angels actually use helmet colours to denote type of unit. So they usually have the tactical squads with red helmets, they have the assault squads with yellow helmets, they have devastator squads with blue helmets, and they also have the honor guard who will protect the leader of the army, usually a company captain, and they will have gold helmets. Now, these squad markings actually help differentiate a type of Marine on the battlefield. They also have their squad markings not on the shoulder pad as with many Marines, but actually on their knee, allowing the shoulder pad to show more prominently their allegiance to their chapter. Now, moving away from the standard Codex organisation, there is a part of the Blood Angels which is non-Codex, and that is the Death Company. Now, I mentioned the Death Company in my last video, and that is because they are quite an integral part of the Space Marines battle plan. Now, they exist because of the Black Rage. As mentioned in my last video, this is a type of disease of the mind, which is caused by their genetic heritage from Sanguinius. Now, these Marines actually relive the moments leading up to Sanguinius' death at the hands of Horus, and thus will usually be in a state so near rage that they cannot tell who they are. They think they are Sanguinius in most cases, who have to seek out and confront Horus on the battlefield, unable to recognise the fact that they are now 10,000 years in the future and facing an entirely different opponent, be that Tyranids, Orcs, Tau, Eldar. They could even be facing Chaos, but they will still feel they are fighting the Horus heresy. Now, because of this, these Marines are almost suicidally motivated, and so will charge into combat, usually using weapons such as the bolt pistol and chainsword rather than the standard bolter. Now, they will charge into combat, using these two weapons to get as close to the enemy as possible before hacking them to pieces. Now, these Marines will of course sustain quite heavy wounds, but so in touch are they with the memories of their Primarch, they are actually imbued with some of his power, and thus are able to shrug off wounds that most other Space Marines, let alone men, would find crippling or even fatal. Now, these Marines will continue actively charging into battle and will fight at where the danger is thickest until all the enemy are eliminated or they are all killed. Now, they tend to have black painted armour as opposed to the red of the Blood Angels, but they will have red crosses all over their armour, signifying the sacrifice of Sanguinius on the battle barge with Horus. Now, these Death Company squads are usually led by chaplains, as opposed to most chaplains in other chapters who will be independent characters. Now, these chaplains will charge into battle with the Death Company, not in the grips of the Black Rage themselves, but guiding those who are, able to direct them to where the enemy is thickest, and enable them to seek out and find the worthy opponents who they need to destroy in order to obtain a measure of peace. Now, of course, the Death Company is integral, and if there are any Marines left alive at the end of a battle who were with the Death Company, they will be so badly wounded they will usually die of their wounds. However, there are some who survive, and as I mentioned before, they will be taken back to Baal and be interred in the Tower of the Lost. Gripped with the rage, they can reach a point where they're so strongly revisiting the memories of their Primarch, they can in fact kill themselves with extreme strain, actually destroying their internal organs and shattering their minds. Now, of course, this is a very rare situation because the ferocity of the Death Company is so well known, but it also lends credence to the fact that the Blood Angels are not as pure as they were originally, and many of the less enlightened think of them as almost tainted by their experience. Now, needless to say, this is not the case, but they still try and hide the fact that they use Death Company to a greater degree to try and dissuade the rumours that they are not loyal to the Emperor, which is of course nonsense. Now, in fact, it's not only living Blood Angels who are able to fall to the Black Rage, but Dreadnoughts as well also are vulnerable to the Black Rage, and because of their status they will have to be also interred into the Death Company as a Death Company Dreadnought, usually replacing their usual weapons with two gigantic power fists or power claws. Now, there's another division of the Blood Angels which differs slightly from the Codex, although not to the same extent that the Death Company do, and this is the Honor Guard. Now, the Honor Guard, as I mentioned before, have gold helmets and will usually be assigned to the leader of the army. Because of this, they're not always considered so different from other veteran companies who accompany chapter masters in other chapters. However, the Honour Guard can also be formed into something known as a Sanguinary Guard. These are vaunted veterans of their chapter, and they are warriors who stand above their brothers in sheer might and skill. Now, the Sanguinary Guard can trace their origins right back to the first Marines who guarded their Primarch during the Great Crusade leading up to the Horus Heresy. It is even said that the Sanguinary Guard were present on the Vengeful Spirit, Horus's battle barge. Now, they will be clad in golden artificer armour. Now, as I've not mentioned this before, artificer armour is usually very finely crafted, very finely wrought power armour, which, although not too different from the standard marks, will be of such a high quality that it will usually be considered blessed. They will also be armed with wrist-mounted Angelus bolters, which I did mention in my weapons video, and are very similar to the weapons wielded by the Grey Knights, i.e. being storm bolters mounted to the gauntlet of their armour. They will also wade into their battle using the glaives and carmine, which are gigantic blades, which are some of the most powerful power weapons in the Blood Angels armoury. Now, there are some other differences between the Blood Angels and other Space Marine chapters, and the chief among them is the fact that they have something known as Sanguinary Priests. Now, I did mention those in my last video, so I'll keep this brief, but basically Sanguinary Priests are apothecaries of the Blood Angels, who have taken on the role of the chaplain, as they are indisposed helping the Death Company. Now, the Sanguinary Priests are at the centre of the spiritual beliefs of the Blood Angels, and who will administer many of the blood rites as well as the healing of the Marines during and after battle. They will usually be the ones who administer prayers, and will be the primary source of spiritual guidance for all the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. They'll also usually carry a relic chalice, or even just a standard chalice, which they will use in their blood drinking rituals in order to denote their status. Now, there are very few other variations in the Blood Angels that I want to mention, so we can continue on unless there's something that someone specifically wants me to talk about, which we can go back and look at in another video. However, what I'm going to talk about now is the recruitment of the Blood Angels, which is a very short segment, but hopefully will just give a little bit more guidance as to how these Marines are first formed. As with many chapters, the Blood Angels recruit their aspirants from one place, that being the moons of Baal, Baal Primus and Baal Secundus. Now, these contain many of the inhabitants who have survived for countless generations in a radioactive wasteland polluted by the remnants of forgotten wars and infested with mutants. Because of this, they are usually quite strong and knowledgeable in their warcraft, and thus will be ready once every generation to take part in the rituals which will allow an aspirant to join the chapter. The contests to join the chapter are held every generation at Angel's Fall, the cliff where Sanguinius was found as an infant. The aspirants must then reach the place of challenge by journeying through a vast hostile desert and a series of canyons, which will be infested, amongst other things, with fire scorpions and thirst water, all of which can steal the moisture from your very body and reduce you to a dry husk in moments. Now, these perils can claim many young aspirants. However, enough reach the place of challenge to usually hold gladiatorial contests. Once done, there will be 50 victors chosen from the surviving aspirants, who will be then taken in Thunderhawks to the stronghold of the Blood Angels on Baal. However, at this stage they still haven't completed their recruitment process. They then must undergo a vigil of 73 hours without rest in the chapel of the Blood Angels. Those that fail and fall asleep are taken away by the blood servitors, and nobody knows what happens to them, although some theorise they make up the chapter serfs and even the servitors who serve the Blood Angels in war and peace. At the end of the vigil, the remaining aspirants are offered a chalice, rumoured to contain a small amount of Sanguinius' blood, by the Sanguinary Priests. After taking it in, they usually fall into a coma and are entombed by the blood servitors into a casket in the Hall of Sarcophagi. They then remain there for a full year in the care of the casket's life support systems while they are injected with the blood of Sanguinius. Many die at this stage, incapable of sustaining the changes to their body that are being wrought. Some others are awake too early and are trapped in this claustrophobic blood-filled canister until they are driven insane. However, those that survive and make it through the process awake as newly born Space Marines, their old weak bodies washed away in the blood of Sanguinius and transformed into strong new bodies that will enable them to fight the wars of the Emperor and become Space Marines. out of lore for a moment, many of you can see the parallels that lie here between vampires in fantasy lore and the Blood Angels in the 40k lore. Now, I believe this is probably quite a deliberate act, and shows that although the Blood Angels follow an angelic primarch, they do have very dark rituals which enable them to become who they are. So it's sometimes a little bit of a double-sided coin as to how pure the Blood Angels really are. Now, that's everything I wanted to mention in relation to the organisation of the Blood Angels and in relation to their recruitment. So that's it for this video. What's going to happen next is that we're going to be bringing out a few more videos about the Space Marine organisation in general, usually around the specific roles and specialities in the Space Marines. We're then going to move on to a few more videos which relate to the Space Marines in general before moving on to doing the chapter videos in full. So we'll be doing quite a few more of those, and then we'll be starting to move on to other aspects of the Imperium and of the 40k universe at large, including elements of the Warp, which will be very interesting, as that will enable us to move on to things like Chaos and the Eldar. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time on the Vaults of Terra.